Yeah, disagreements come along a lot. Because just because I'm higher up in the school district does not mean the disagreements go away. They just get worse. I would much rather, personally, argue with a mad parent than argue with somebody who I work with. I can diffuse a situation faster with a parent than I can with somebody else. And so let's look at this. When you're arguing with somebody, the number one thing you should do, identify what the real problem is. Get down to brass tacks. What is the real problem? And I love the Bible on this case because what was the real problem? John Mark, right? John Mark was the real problem. But when you are disagreeing, get down to why you're really disagreeing. Is it because you're jealous? Or you're envious? Or you're having a bad day? Or, I'm just going to argue because I want to. Let's see where it goes today. Some people are like that, but identify what the real source is. If you're disagreeing with somebody, talk to God about it. Trust me, if I don't like what Terry's doing and I want to disagree with what she's doing, you know what I better do first before I talk to her about it? I better pray about it. Let me tell you, if you pray first and then talk to them second, you don't have as big of a disagreement. Now, I don't know if I can describe this to you because I don't know if you have seen roosters. And my mother used to call me a banty rooster. And a banty rooster, in my mind, was a puffed up rooster who would go around and pick fights for fun. My mother described me as a banty rooster. Quit being a banty rooster. It's not your issue. And trust me, you've got to pray first. Then talk to the person. The third thing is resist the temptation to sin. Resist. Because the worst thing you can ever do is when you're mad at somebody and you're going to disagree with somebody, go do something you know you shouldn't be doing. For instance, I'm mad, and this makes me so mad, I'm going to go spend $1,000 on my credit card because that will make me feel better. Does that $1,000 really help you? It just gets you in debt. Or, as in the case of this week, I had a very stressful week, and my comfort thing is Johnny's Rocket Chocolate. I love it. And I love ice cream, and I love the marshmallows, I love the almonds, I love all that stuff. I could eat that. It's ice cream. I could eat it 4 and 5 times a day this week. Okay? But does that do any good? No, it just makes me gain weight. And so when I tried on pants yesterday at Dillard's, I could not wear the size I normally wear. So you just have to look at that. Next thing, this is what you should do as well. Pray for the disagreement and pray for the other person. And I guarantee you, there was much prayer between Paul and Barnabas during this whole time. And I guarantee you, they probably prayed for each other. But they couldn't come to a conclusion, so they had to go in different directions. So, with 2 divisions, we now come to the exciting map. And let's look at this in Acts 16, verses 1 through 5. Here we have things starting to multiply.
第16章第1到5节，保罗来到特庇，又到路斯德，在那里有一个信徒名叫提摩太，是信主之犹太妇人的儿子，他父亲却是希腊人。路斯德和以哥念的弟兄都称赞他。保罗要带他回去，只因那些地方的犹太人都知道他父亲是希腊人，就给他行了割礼。他们经过各城，把耶路撒冷使徒和长老所定的条规交给门徒遵守。于是众教会信心越发坚固，人数天天加增。
Yay. It's like a cliffhanger there. Okay. So let's look at this. Here we go. Here's our map. Paul's second missionary journey. Yay. I'm finally excited because this is the one I know so much about, and we may spend several days on some of this stuff because there's so much. Where did the missionary journey start? Thank you, William. It started in Antioch. And where did Acts chapter 16 say they went? Derby and Lystra. So you can mark that on your map if you'd like. And this second missionary journey happened sometime between 51 to 53 AD, and they covered 4,506 kilometers on this one. A lot of walking. Lots of walking. Yes? That is at 2,800 miles. That's a long ways to go. And remember, I just want to go over this the first time. The first missionary journey started here. This is Patmos where they had the disagreement. Then they came up to here, came up, and went to Lystra and Derby. Do you remember what happened in Lystra and Derby? They were stoned. Yes, Paul was stoned. And they also were claiming that they were gods. A lot of weird things happened in Derby and Lystra. And it's kind of interesting. That's where they wanted to go to first. And think about this, though. Very smart. Because when I looked at this map, I went, why would they start there? Remember, the first missionary journey went this way. And when they got here, they just went back. Guess who Paul hadn't visited the second time yet? People in Derby. So his second missionary journey goes straight to the people he hadn't seen the second time yet. And that is kind of cool, if you think about it. Paul was really concerned about the spiritual growth of these people. Very much so. So here's our second missionary journey. And all of a sudden we meet a guy by the name of Timothy. Woe be unto Timothy. Woe be unto Timothy. We could speak volumes. We could be here till after Moon Festival Day for 3 days or something like that to talk about Timothy. Very basic. Here we go. Paul asked Timothy to join him on his journey. Timothy will become a significant feature or person in Paul's life for the rest of his life. In fact, if you really want to fast forward just a few years, guess who was the last person Paul wrote to? Timothy. Here it is, second missionary journey. He meets the guy and says, you've got to come with me. Guess how old Timothy was? He was probably Eric's age or a little bit younger. Can you imagine? There was something in Timothy. Not only that, if Timothy followed certain Jewish customs, then his message would be heard. So he had to go through some certain things that we'll just kind of brush over. But there were cultural things because everybody knew that Timothy was half Greek, half Jew. And remember, the churches in Derby and Lystra were what? They were bilingual synagogues. They had Jews and Greeks in the same building. So Paul thought it would be in his best interest to follow some Jewish laws in order so that people could listen to him. And trust me, how many people honestly are going to listen to Eric right now? You know, really, by our standards today, how many people are really going to listen to somebody? No offense. No offense at all. But that's the age we're talking about. And Paul goes, this guy's got it. This guy has got it. Why? Because Timothy was a unique choice. There was something that Paul saw in Timothy's upbringing that made him a master teacher to train Timothy. And once we get further into the journeys with Paul and Timothy, I will talk more about it. But you just have to take my word for it. Timothy was a certain special young individual. Timothy had a unique upbringing too. a very unique upbringing. And all this stuff that, like I said, we'll cover it later. But this, when we start talking about the book of 1st and 2nd Timothy, you'll really get into that. Timothy's perspective was not unlike any other ones that we've had in the Bible. When you hear what Timothy had to say, and you heard what Timothy did, you'll understand. His perspective was totally different than Paul's, but they were in agreement on a lot of the things. Timothy had a unique maturity level. In other words, he was thinking way beyond his years at a young age. And you know that God's hand is in it, which is that young and has that kind of spiritual maturity. So, in conclusion, in G, I put mathematics. Okay? We have dividing only to multiply. So, when God is the center of a person's heart, Satan's hindrances only provides opportunities for spiritual growth. In other words, the disagreement between Paul and Barnabas could have been Satan wanted to stop the whole thing. But because their hearts and their minds were focused in upon God, Satan lost. Paul and Barnabas' dissension provided for the more spreading of the gospel. Provided for more spreading, typo, for more spreading of the gospel. And last but not least, Timothy's commitment and dedication meant avoiding cultural barriers. And that is the life of Barnabas. And now we're going to pick up Timothy, and now we're going to go to some really cool places that I know a lot about. And that's my lesson for today.